بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واعلموا أنما غنمتم من شيء فأن لله خمسه وللرسول ولذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلى الله على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. أما بعد، فقد قال الحكيم في كتابه الكريم: وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واركعوا مع الراكعين. We have been explaining the rules of Zakat, and I was trying to explain the rules regarding wheat, barley, raisin, and dates. I mentioned that if these crops or if these things reach the taxable limit, which is 847 kg, then zakat has to be paid from them. And of course, there are two suppositions. Once these things, the wheat, barley, raisin, or maybe grapes, and dates are watered with rainwater, or the canal water, or the land benefits from the moisture which it has, and there is no need for irrigation. This is one supposition. Sometimes a land may be irrigated with the water from the well or with bucket water, as they say, with the bucket water. In this case, the zakat is different. Of course, zakat is payable if these things, if the crop reaches the taxable limit, which is 847 kg. Now, in the first supposition, the zakat would be 10%. And the second supposition, the zakat is only 5%. Now, if there is a piece of land, which is irrigated, which is watered with water from the rain and canal, as well as from the bucket, or from the well, which is drawn out, the water is drawn out from the well with bucket and such other means. In this case, if it is said in common view, that the wheat and barley, raisins and dates have been watered with both of them, or both ways, the rainwater and the bucket water, in this case, of course, the zakat is 7.5%, which is the middle way. It is neither 10% nor 5%. It is the middle of the two. It is 7.5%. And if a piece of land is irrigated with water from both, with water from the well, with the bucket, and also with water from the rain, but if it is said in common view, if it is said in urf and custom, that the crop has been watered with bucket water, in this case, the zakat is 5%. Though it has been for some times, of course, for some times it has been irrigated or it has benefited from the rainwater, but for most of the time it has benefited from the bucket water, or it has been watered with the bucket water, in which case, of course, the zakat is only 5%. It is not 10%, it's not 7.5%, it's only 7%. Now, of course, when it comes to gold, I have actually explained the rules regarding wheat, barley, raisins, and dates. These are the crops which are harvested. Of course, the wheat and barley, they are harvested, they are reaped. And as I mentioned, it should be thrashed. The wheat crop cannot be calculated when it's standing. It has to be collected, it has to be thrashed. From the grains have to be thrashed from the chaff. And after the crop has dried, then of course it has to be weighed. And if the total weight reaches 847 kg, in that case, zakat would be payable and there would be zakat liability. Otherwise, if it is less than 847 kg, even by 1 kilo, there would be no zakat, and the person, the owner, would not be under the obligation to pay anything from the crop. Now, when it comes to gold, I mentioned also in the previous session, I did explain some issues of the gold, but I promised that I would carry on the discussion regarding gold and silver. Of course, the question is, what is the taxable limit of gold and silver? It has to be noted, as I mentioned in the previous session, that the taxable limit, the zakat is payable on gold and silver only when the gold is changed and turned into coin, and the coin is used in currency for transactions, just as we use the currency notes, the bills which is given by the banks. If gold is turned into coins and the coins are used for transaction as currency, in that case only zakat would be payable on gold and silver. Otherwise, there is no zakat liability. And in the present time, as you know, gold is no longer used as in currency, and it's no longer used to buy things with. So people do not carry gold to the market to buy things. Instead, they carry, of course, banknotes, they carry currency notes to purchase things. So we can conclude that in the present time, there is no zakat on gold and silver. Now, let's assume that gold and silver are used are changed into coins, and the coins are used for buying things. Now it has to be noted that gold coins and silver coins should be used by public, by the people in the streets, not by a particular individual, not by a particular family or a particular group of people. It has to be used in the whole country, in the whole territory, Islamic land, as currency for buying things, for purchasing things, for transactions. Otherwise, if a particular person, if a particular individual uses it to buy things, then that is not considered as something currency. In that case also, zakat would not be payable. Now, what is the taxable limit of gold? According to religious authorities, the taxable limit of gold is 20 misqal of gold.
يا دافع الخطوب يا جابر المعطوف يا من هو مندوبي فعفوك مطلوبي يا دافع الخطوب يا جابر المعطوف يا من هو مندوبي فعفوك مطلوبي يا ستار العيوب يا غفار الذنوب يا ستار العيوب يا غفار الذنوب يا علام الغيوب يا كشاف الكروب.
If the weight of the gold coins, assuming that the gold is in coins, not in biscuits, if it is in coins, and now if it is used in currency, let's assume that it is used in currency. If the weight of the coins reach 20 misqal, then of course in that case zakat would be payable, and in that case 1/40 of that gold has to be paid as zakat. 1/40, which is of course equal to 1.728 grams. 1.728 grams. Now I should say once again that when it comes to how much misqal is, there are different views about the weight, because misqal is a very old measurement. People used to use the term misqal long time ago, but it is still used by jurisprudence. And as some scholars have said, 1 misqal is equal to 4.25 grams. But I have found some other scholars who say that 1 misqal is equal to a little more than 3.3 grams, which is 3.45 grams. Some scholars I have seen in their books, in their treatises, in their epistles of Islamic laws, they have said that 1 misqal is equal to 3.45 grams. Now there is a difference. You have to make sure about the weight of 1 misqal. And you have to ask the jewelers, those people who are busy, who are engaged in buying and selling gold and silver. It has to be consulted with them. And I personally have no knowledge as to the weight of misqal, because there are different views. And you can of course make sure about it by consulting the experts and consulting the jewelers and those people who engage in gold and silver trades and business. Now, if gold reaches the taxable limit, you have to give 1/40 of it as zakat, and that is what, of course, you have to give. What about the silver? Silver is also something that used to be used in the past, of course, for transaction, and it's also no longer used for transaction, no longer used in currency. So, of course, sometimes we do see that in some countries silver is used and it's changed into coins, and of course the coins are valuable, they are used in currency for transaction. But of course no one carries, for the time being, no one carries silver coins. People use banknotes, checks, credit cards and such things. So of course using silver for transaction is a little bit out of fashion and it's out of use. But despite that, we have to know the rules regarding zakat on silver. What is the taxable limit of zakat and on silver? According to religious authorities, there are two minimum taxable limits for silver. Minimum taxable limits for silver. The first one is when the weight of silver reaches 105 ordinary misqals, which is of course equal to 483.88 grams. It is a little bit more than 483 grams. If the weight of the silver reaches 105 ordinary misqals, then of course the zakat has to be paid. And what is the zakat? Zakat is of course 2.5%. It is less than 3% and more than 2%. It is the middle point. 2.5% of that gold has to be given as zakat. Now this is of course the first taxable limit. It is the minimum taxable limit. What about the second? The second limit of silver is when there is an addition of 21 misqals. If an addition of 21 misqal is there, that is, if, for example, if an addition of 21 misqal takes place to 105 misqals, ordinary misqals of gold, in that case the zakat should be paid on 126 misqals. On 126 misqals. Of course, if the addition is less than 21 misqals, he should pay zakat only on 105 misqals only, and no zakat is payable on the additional quantity. These are the taxable limits for zakat, and of course, as I did mention in the previous session, in the present time we as people who are living in cities and towns and also in rural areas, we are not very much concerned about these things, as we are not using these things for transaction. We are not using these things to buy things, to buy commodities, to buy utensils, to buy things we need from the market. So the gold and silver are no longer used for exchanging, as currency, and for transactions. So there are of course people who are still confused, who think that zakat has to be paid on everything they have in their houses and their possession. Of course, it is not zakat that is paid on them, it is rather khums that has to be paid on those things. You have to differentiate between the first bit and the second, between khums and zakat, and unless you study for yourself the differences, the details, and the distinct, of course, explanations given by the religious authorities in their books and also in demonstrative jurisprudential sources, I think you would still remain confused and you would still ask questions about zakat on your commodities and on your belongings.
ناجيتك يا رحمن ودعوتك يا ديان يا خالق الإنسان الله 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 يا خالق الإنسان الله الله الله.
So it is not zakat that is payable on your jewelry. It is not zakat that is payable on your household gadgets. It is khums that might be, of course, payable. And you have to understand that if something has been used and if something has already been purified through payment of zakat, through payment of khums, then it's not then it's not any longer obligatory to pay zakat on them once again. So once something has been purified, once khums has been paid from something, and once zakat has been paid on something, then it's no longer necessary, no longer wajib to give zakat on them once again. Now, again we carry on the issue, as I did explain in the previous session, something that you want to give zakat from, it has to remain with you for 11 months, and of course, if it has been with you or if you have kept them for less than 11 months, then zakat is not payable on them. And you have to understand also this, that if you have gold, if you have silver, even to the taxable limit, even more than the taxable limit, and if they are not in gold coins, and if they are not in silver coins, then zakat will not be payable on them. But if they are in gold coins and you have kept them with you for, let's say, for 10 months, and then on the 11th or on the 12th month, on the 11th month, you turned them into biscuits, not into gold coins, because they were in gold coins, but you changed them. You melted the gold and silver and you changed them into biscuits, then zakat would not be payable on them. If the shape of the coins are changed and they are changed into biscuits or into something melted form, then zakat is not payable. But of course, if you are changing them on the 12th month from the coins into biscuits with the intention to escape zakat, then the religious authorities have said that you have to pay zakat on them, because your intention was to change, to escape, to elude, or to avoid paying zakat. In which case, of course, you have to pay zakat on them and you cannot escape. But if you change them into coins on the 11th month or on the into biscuits or into melt, if you melt them on the 11th month or on the 10th month, then zakat would not be payable. Now, let us carry on our discussion regarding zakat on the remaining objects, on the remaining things on which zakat is payable. Now, zakat, as I mentioned, is payable on camels, cows, and sheep also, including goats. The first one is camel. For zakat on camels, cows, and sheep, there are two additional conditions besides the other, of course, usual conditions which were mentioned. As was mentioned, they have to remain, they have to be with the owner for 11 months. That was one of the conditions. And of course, the taxable limit, they have to reach the taxable limit. And there are two other conditions. Of course, the other conditions also, there were some conditions which I mentioned. I did say that the owner must be free, must be sane. And of course, if the owner is a slave, he is not under the obligation to pay any zakat. But I did give some explanations regarding freedom and sanity. If a person is sane or insane, there are some differences. Sometimes you have to pay zakat and sometimes you are not supposed to pay zakat. Now, when it comes to barley, wheat, raisins, of course, even if you are not sane, then zakat has to be paid on those objects. Now, when it comes to the other additional conditions with regard to camels and animals, of course, generally speaking, the two conditions have been explained by religious authorities as such. The first one is that the animal should be grazed in the jungle and in the open area. This is an important condition. If the animals are fed with grass or with fodder kept in the house and brought from the land, cut and reaped from the land, then zakat is not payable on them. This is an important condition that has to be noted. The animals on which zakat may be payable, provided that they have to reach the taxable limit, should actually feed in the jungles, and they should graze in the jungles and in open fields, not on the grass which is cultivated and which is cut and reaped and brought home and given to them. So if, of course, in the second case, the animals, though they are more than the taxable limit, if they are given fodder which has been brought from outside and reaped and cut by the owner, then there is no zakat on those animals. The second condition is that as a matter of precaution, because this is not a fatwa, as a matter of precaution, it is not it is said it is not a condition that the camel, cow or small cattle should not have worked during the whole year. It's not a condition. The animals can be used for plowing, for carrying things, and it's not a condition they can be used, but the most important condition is that they should graze in the jungle and in the open field. In that case, if the animals reach the taxable limit, then zakat has to be paid. And of course, when it comes to the taxable limits of cows, camels, and sheep, there are all different taxable limits. For example, camels, there are 12 taxable limits for camels. 12 taxable limits for camels. Inshallah, in the next session to come, I will elaborate on the taxable limits of the animals, including camels, cows, and sheep. Until then, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا
يا ربنا
واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا يا ربنا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا